My life became a prison, and I became a prisoner in my mind and in my home, and that's exactly what it became. My name is Niall Manelli. I was born in Dublin, I think, the Coombe, and I grew up in Newbridge in Kildare. So I've got two older brothers and an older sister, so I'm the youngest of four kids. Through primary school, from what I can remember, my interest would have been, I always would have been sporty. My family would have been sporty. My two older brothers would have played basketball, they would have done athletics, they would have played football. So I kind of followed that team, I suppose, in the family. So yeah, generally, like I think my mother used to always tell me, like, she could never keep me in. Like, I always just wanted to be outside. She had so much hassle trying to get me back into the house, because all I wanted to do was run, play, climb trees. You know, always wanted to be kind of running around the estate. Just being active was huge in my life, and it was huge in my family's life as well. We were just a very active family, kind of growing up. So in primary school, I can kind of, the only thing I can kind of remember is just always wanting to be outside. I never wanted to be inside. So anytime I was in the classroom, all I was thinking about was being outside the classroom. You know, I couldn't wait for the bell to ring so I could kind of run home, take out the bike, take out the football, you know, play games, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I generally kind of felt the happiest, is when I was out playing with friends and running around and having fun. Primary school itself for me kind of was hard. It was tough. I grew up with a learning disability. I couldn't really read or write properly, so I'd be kind of borderline dyslexic. So that would have came with a lot of challenges with teachers, and of course with classmates and stuff too. I would have kind of been bullied a lot. I would have been isolated in primary school. So I would have, you know, being told to sit at the top of the class, so the teacher could kind of keep an eye on me, because I was always disruptive, because they didn't know what was going on. While everyone else was kind of doing sums and doing reading and writing, I was kind of looking around going, like, you know, what the hell am I doing here, or whatever, you know. So I didn't feel like I could be me in school. I felt like an outcast. I felt isolated. So who wants to sit in a situation or sit in an atmosphere and stuff like that where they don't feel comfortable? I never felt comfortable in school because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand the system. I didn't understand what was being said to me, or what we had to write, or what we had to do, anything. So as a young child, it's very hard when you're in an atmosphere where you don't feel comfortable. But I felt comfortable. It's going to sound strange, but I felt comfortable on the streets. You know what I mean? I felt comfortable running around. I felt comfortable playing. I would have been a good little footballer. I would have been very good at athletics. I would have been getting a Tomosny and all that kind of stuff through, or with athletics or whatever. So I just felt confident. I felt like my confidence and self-esteem grew when I was playing and I was on the streets and outside the school than I would in school. I felt like from 3 o'clock to I went to bed, I was Niall. I was confident. I had self-esteem. I had, you know, I had happiness in myself. And then going to bed that night, I knew I had to wake up the next morning and become, you know, something that I didn't like at the time, because I felt stupid. I felt isolated, and I felt, I suppose, outcasted from being in school. Well, it's funny, because the transition between primary school and secondary school, I said to myself, I made a promise to myself that summer. I was like, right, what I learned from primary school was, if I stand out and people can take advantage of me. So say I learned a disability, I couldn't read and write properly and stuff. So if I didn't mask that, and I didn't kind of come around with ways of kind of stopping people from recognizing these things, that it would help me survive, I suppose, in secondary school. So I realized that I was being bullied for what was wrong with me, as in, like, I couldn't read or write properly, or, you know, but I could play sports really well. So I made a promise to myself in that summer going into secondary school, that when I was going to secondary school, I was nearly going to become the bully. So I learned that, okay, so if these guys act tough, or these guys, shout and roar and curse and push people around and all that kind of stuff, they don't tend to get what I'm getting, punched and kicked and money robbed and lunch robbed and kind of being called all these names. They seem to have like a lot of, I suppose, respect or whatever like that. It's funny because as a 12 or 13-year-old, it's crazy that you're actually thinking this, and you're thinking of survival methods, instead of talking to people and sitting down with my family, or sharing my feelings with teachers or family or friends or anything like that. I was planning survival mechanisms and stuff like that as a 12 or 13-year-old child, which is absolutely crazy to think about now, even talking about this. But that's what I did. I planned little things. So I said, I was going to be one of these hard asses when I went to secondary school. I'm not going to be bullied. I'm going to fucking stand up for myself. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be pushed around. So I need to, I suppose, to put my flag into the ground the minute I got to secondary school, and just make sure I wasn't going to be a pushover. So even if somebody did, break the mask down and realize that I had a learning disability, they were probably going to be too afraid to say anything to me, because I was going to push them, hit them, or call them names. So I basically created somebody inside me to deal with the issues that I was having that I couldn't deal with myself. Well, to be honest, I've had anxiety from a very young age. I remember having anxiety in primary school. When you wake up every morning, as I said, you're going into an environment that you don't feel comfortable in. You get that, but you don't know what it's called. You don't know what it is. There's no internet around, or there's no one coming to your school saying, okay guys, if you get this really bad feeling in your stomach, and your heart starts racing, and you're getting palpitations and sweaty palms, and all of this kind of stuff, and you feel like you're going to faint and pass out, that's called anxiety. Don't worry about it. Here's a few tools to get you over it. So I ain't got a clue, but looking back at it now, I realized I did have it from a very young age. So throughout primary school and secondary school, I had anxiety. I would leave school with anxiety. I'd come to school with anxiety. Anxiety's been my friend from a very young age. And I'm not alone in that. I think there's kids now growing up, and it's probably even worse now with social media and stuff like that, but anxiety's huge. We all have it. We're all human. No one is getting away from anxiety. It's a natural instinct inside our body to keep us alive. It's been in us for 10,000 years. But I just didn't know how to control it. I didn't know how to name it. And I didn't know what it was. So I had some really dark days, some low days, some very low days where I felt confused, I felt alone, I felt isolated. I wondered, did anyone else suffer from this? No one else talked about it. My friends didn't seem to suffer from all these kind of feelings inside. So I just tried to bury it. And this other persona that I was trying to create, this other Niall, this mask I was trying to wear, done that for me. It protected me in some hard times in my life, and I needed that at that time in my life. I needed to survive that way. That's how I taught myself how to survive. That was my survival instincts kicking in. I grew up in a world where I honestly didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't know what my meaning and purpose was, and not to say when you're that young you should know, but it was things I used to think about, because I was battling so much and I was confused all the time. And when you're asking yourself constant questions every single day, what is my meaning and purpose? What am I doing here? Like, why do I have this? And why am I confused? And why am I being treated like this? Or why am I treating myself like this? I remember coming to the end of school. I remember walking across, at our graduation or Debs or whatever. I don't know what's called now. I remember having been like this fear inside me there was fear and happiness. Fear to the point as, what the fuck am I going to do next? And then happiness as if, well, at least I don't have to hang around with these anymore. Hundreds of kids and all that kind of stuff that didn't understand me. And I probably didn't understand them either. We were probably on two different wavelengths. Teachers who didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them. Looking back at it now, I was probably a handful to deal with. And I'm not saying, and it's nobody's fault. I'm not blaming anybody, but the happiness would have come from, right, I don't have to wear one mask anymore. I'm not going to be bullied anymore. I don't have to fear anything anymore. I'm not going to be punched, kicked, beaten up, whatever it may be. So now I can take that mask off. But then there was always the fear of, well, what happens next? I don't go to college. Am I going to be this guy who's, just, I don't know, sweeping the roads and all that kind of stuff? Not to say that's a bad job or anything like that, but you know, any job out there. Like I didn't know. I was confused, and this was something at the time, my very first job. Not many people know this, but I worked at McDonald's for 3 months of the summer. It was my very first job that came to Newbridge, and at the time I just knew it paid good money, and you didn't need certain, you know, qualifications to get in there. So I worked at McDonald's for 3 months, and I just remember being there for a few months, and I was like, is this it? You know, is this what I had to do? Is this what my life is going to be like? Is this my future? And there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but there was always a part of me that believed that I had something bigger. There was something bigger in me. And my sister, we used to sit around the Christmas table, and my older brothers and sisters used to be talking about what to have, houses and, you know, cars, and how they're going in business and how successful they are. And I always felt at that Christmas table so small. They didn't want me to feel that small. It wasn't set out to make me feel small or whatever. But I always used to remember sitting there going, I'm a fucking ashamed of myself. You know, I'm an embarrassment on my family, you know. That's even hard to say. If you're not following that pattern, they had their pattern, they had their way of making it out. So for me, I thought at the time, if I didn't go that route, that I wasn't going to make it in anything. Later on in life, I look back on that, and, you know, I realize that you don't need that. You don't need to be following somebody else's path to find your own. You can get to your own goal by following your own path in your own heart. And I suppose that's what I didn't know at the time, but I do know now. So when I was in McDonald's, I always thought, I said, this mightn't be their path, but I will catch them. I will be on a path to success someday. And that's what my sister always believed in me. I was living in Australia. So when I was living in Australia, I was supposed to only be living there for a year. So you get 1 year kind of working holiday visa, whatever like that. So I overstayed my welcome. Cut a long story short, I got caught. I got locked up for a week in detention centre, and I got deported. Shackles, the whole shebang. So I came home, whatever, where I didn't want to be. I felt like when I left for Australia, I could be me. All the masks went. You know, I could be who I wanted to be. I didn't have to be, you know, what I built when I was in Ireland. I didn't have to be who people knew me as. I could be free. So I could, I suppose, be Niall. You know what I mean? I didn't have to be Manelli or Mun or whatever it is, whatever. I could be Niall, and that's what I was in Australia, and that's why it was tranquil over there for me. It was peaceful. I could be me. I felt comfortable. So when I got deported home, which was completely fair or whatever, I kind of I started spiraling into a bad situation. I started coming home, started doing drugs, started drinking a lot, started partying every weekend. You know, just self-hate become a huge part of my life. So basically, Good Friday, a long time ago, back in 2004, I ended up running out of alcohol or whatever like that. Then there was a lot of drugs at the party, so I started getting into all the drugs, started doing some cocaine, some speed, eventually just ended up in hospital. Basically, cut a long story short, in a week in a cardiac unit in Naas Hospital. So, you know, Naas Hospital is a scary place when you're lying in a unit where most of the people in the unit are in their 80s and 90s, and they're passing away. And here's this 24-year-old sitting up amongst them, and families are coming in with kids, and they're like, what's that child doing over there? Like, what's he doing in this ward? You know, I had to be wheeled around in a wheelchair. All these things. It was very debilitating. Again, not good for my confidence and self-esteem. So when I left hospital, I started getting panic attacks, because every time I exerted myself, or I started to kind of get my heart rate up again, my heart started telling my brain, oh, this is it, you're going to pass out again, this is it, you're going to die. And I started to generate panic attacks. So the easiest and simplest things could have provoked a panic attack. Like, I mean, if I walked up the stairs too fast, got to the top of the stairs, I'd have a panic attack. And if anyone ever says they have a panic attack, these are not something to be taken lightly. You know, panic attacks is you have yourself 100% convinced you are going to die. End of. Your brain convinces yourself and your body you are about to die. Say your last words. This is it. These are your last breaths. That's it. And then it peaks. For me, it peaked. And then after that, there was a come down. And then you'd feel absolutely wrecked down for the rest of the day. But the panic attacks generated the depression, because with panic attacks, I couldn't work. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't get out. I didn't leave my house. And then I became lonely, isolated. And again, probably what I felt as a kid. just not accepted in this world, and why me? And this isn't, and sorry, I don't want to come across as like, why is the world doing this to me, whatever like that, but they were my emotions and feelings at the time. It wasn't acting against the world, but I was saying to myself, why do I have to be sick? Why do I have to suffer from anxiety? Why can't I just be normal? Why can't I be like my friends? But not, no, now looking back, my friends probably weren't normal either. They could have been suffering too, but just nobody was saying something. My anxiety and depression just happened to bubble up out. I didn't leave the house. At the time, there was only text messaging. There wasn't like WhatsApps or any of that kind of stuff or whatever. There was no social media, whatever. So, you know, whether it was me or whether it was my friends that didn't understand what I was going through, so they didn't know what to say to me, but text messaging started to dry up. Well, there was no point kind of contacting me because I couldn't go out the weekends and all that kind of stuff, whatever. So I became a hermit, you know, so I was just sitting at home. You know, I suppose watching the seasons go by from my bedroom, you know. So that made me angry and resentful and hateful and kind of like, fuck the world. And, you know, because I didn't understand what was going on, the only time I left the house was to go to the doctors for checkups, to get my prescriptions and to go to counselling. But so I became a prisoner in my own home and in my own mind. And that's what happened for about 18 months of just not leaving my house. You know, going to bed at night, you know, I'm praying that I didn't wake up the next morning. You know, I was going to bed every night, going to bed, and I just said, please let me die in my sleep. You know, please let me just not wake up. I don't want to feel like this anymore, you know. 18 months of that leads to me contemplating, I suppose I'm planning to take my own life. But the one thing is I wanted to make it look like an accident. That was the only thing I kind of had in my head. It was like I didn't want to take my own life and stuff and then have my parents kind of like, you know, come home and find me. So I kind of wanted to do it somewhere where you know, they wouldn't find me, and I suppose the emergency response or whatever, the ambulance or fire brigade and stuff like that were the first people they would find me. And by the time my parents see me, I don't know, I just that was it. That was in my head of just not taking my own life in my own home. I'm trying to do it externally. I went to do it one day at one of the locations and failed, and basically, cut a long story short, kind of came home and told my dad what I just attempted to do. It was the first time that he actually knew this was serious. Before, I think, and you know, it's not my dad or mom's fault, whatever like that, but they probably never came in touch with anybody who was suffering, you know, like face to face like this before. So when your son comes to you, I presume, and breaks down and says, I just tried to take my own life, he realizes this is serious shit, like, you know. So from there, my dad kind of contacted the family, and we kind of come up with a plan to try get me out of it, out of depression and all that kind of stuff. So my dad contacted one of his best friends, a lad called Jerry Loftus, who was massive into the fitness. He would have been into Superstars and all that kind of stuff growing up, and said, look, my dad kind of realised the happiest I ever was when I was doing fitness and I was doing athletics, and I was out running, jumping, climbing, all that kind of stuff, and he knew Jerry could provide that for me. But the 18 months my dad was trying to get me to Jerry, and I wouldn't go because I had no confidence in myself. I didn't want to leave the house. But it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I gave up, and I was like, I'll fucking do anything, you know. There was a time where I was in hospital and they were going to admit me to Lakeview, and I remember being in the hospital bed, and they had the curtain around the bed, and the doctor was talking to my parents about admitting me to Lakeview, which is a psychiatric ward in Nest Hospital. So that's how close I came to going down that road. You got to understand, right, when it comes to depression and it comes to 18 months of battling and fighting, and you're tired, you're wrecked, you just want it to stop. For me, that's all I wanted. I just wanted it to stop. I was just sick of fighting and battling. I gave up. I couldn't battle anymore. So I remember during the day, and I was like, I remember getting into my car, and I don't remember, which is weirdly enough, I don't really remember kind of like saying to myself, like, I'm going to miss my parents or miss my family, or, you know, will they miss me and all that kind of stuff. At the time, I thought I was a burden on them. So the image I had in my head driving to the location or whatever like that was, everyone's going to be happy. this this is going to make my family happy. By me doing this, trying to make a permanent the decision on a temporary emotion was going to make my family okay to move on from the burden I was on them. That's what was in my head, which is fucked up to say now. But I was driving to that location going, this is good. Like, once I get this over and done with, my pain, that's it. My family don't have to deal with me anymore. This is something I thought I was going to have for the rest of my life. I didn't understand that emotions, everything's temporary. Whether it's good times, bad times, everything is temporary in life. Depression is temporary. It's not going to last forever. But the good times don't last forever either. So you're going to have good and bad waved in, but I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. I thought this was something I was going to suffer from the rest of my life. So driving to the location, I thought that I was doing my family a favour. That's what I thought. It was during the day, sort of day like today, a bit of an overcast day. And I remember driving through the town, and to be honest, it was a blurry. Like, I can't really remember. I remember driving over the bridge in Newbridge, and I was more kind of thinking about the end, thinking about what was about to happen. I never, ever, ever for a second thought that my family would miss me or my friends would miss me. Well, I suppose meeting Jerry was the turning point in my life. Jerry, he knows now what he done for me, but at the time I don't think he understood how sick I was, and how I suppose unhealthy I was in my mind. He probably just got a phone call from my dad, kind of saying something like, oh, my son's a little sad, he could do with a pick me up. I don't know what my dad would have said to him, but I couldn't imagine my dad kind of sharing too much information with him, because my dad, that's the type of person my dad is. He would be very closed off with emotions and kind of wouldn't share too much. So I presume Jerry didn't know at the time. I never really talked to him about it, but he does know. I've talked to him about what he's done for me. But I remember showing up to the gym. So basically it was a stand house in Newbridge, which isn't there anymore. And I remember being overweight, probably being 3 or 4 stone heavier than my natural weight at the time, and turning up. And Jerry's an amazing man. He's what I needed at the time. The Jerry process was basically going into the gym, and Jerry, I don't think he's got qualifications in counselling or psychotherapy or any of that kind of stuff. Jerry to me was just a very nice person, very positive, always positive, super nice. Even now, I'd go get massaged. He's a massage therapist or whatever, but still out training, running miles, doing push-ups, chin-ups, all that kind of stuff. Everyone sees him around the town running around. He's just a super, super nice, positive person, and that's what I needed at the time, because my confidence was at an all-time low and I had no self-esteem. I met a guy and I was even apprehensive. I was like, what is this guy all about? Like, he's like jumping around the place and he's shaking his hands and he's, come on, let's do this. And I was like, what the fuck is going on with this lad? You know what I mean? So I'm like, I lifted weights before, but it was in a moaning and groaning and kind of no one spoke and all that kind of stuff. This guy was just positive, bouncing around the place, whatever. And I just remember training with him the first few times and thinking, what the fuck is going on? Like, what's my dad after setting me up here? And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to click this guy or whatever, But then after a while, he started instilling confidence in me. His positivity translated onto me. He infected me with life, with power, with confidence, with self-esteem, slipping in simple little words, telling me I was good, telling me, geez, you look good, you're definitely getting stronger, all these kind of simple things, whatever. Now, I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody that has or is suffering and has depression. This was what worked for me at that time in my life. That's what worked for me. That's what I needed, and that's what I got. Some people can get that from pills, and some people can get that from a counselor, and some people can get that from other people, from reading a post on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be. People can get it from different directions, different avenues. But for me and that time of the life, Jerry to me was my counsellor, my antidepressants, my everything, all rolled up in one human who just instilled confidence in me. And your parents can do it all day long. They can tell you how amazing you are. Your mother can hug you and kiss you. And can you say, baby, you're my little baby, and all that kind of stuff or whatever, and I'm a mammy's boy. She can tell you all that kind of stuff. But there was something special in him, an energy, whatever it was, that rubbed off on me and infected me with positivity and a will to live again. From that I was like, well, hang on here. Fitness has instilled confidence, self-esteem. It got me out of depression. It helped my mental health. There's something in this. Plus everyone was coming up and asking me what to do here, what to do there, all that kind of stuff. So I might as well kind of help other people but get paid at the same time. So I just said to my brother, I was like, what do you think about me going back to college and maybe becoming a trainer like you teaching me, and then go from there? So that's what I done. I saved up enough money at the time as an electrician and working as a security guard. I saved up enough money, put myself back through college, interned with my brother. So I was working 2 jobs, then interning with my brother as well, through college and then after college, for about a year. And then I kind of came to this, I suppose, crossroads in my life of I wanted to move to Canada. So I was like, well, I'm finished college now. I was thinking about moving to Canada and kind of becoming a CrossFit coach in Canada. So I went and got my level 1 and all, and I was going to like, I'll move to Canada and I'm going to become a CrossFit coach and open a gym there. But I always wanted to set up a gym in Kildare, but I thought there wasn't, back 8-9 years ago, the fitness industry in Ireland was bleak. I think there was 2 CrossFit gyms. I never remember a strength and conditioning gyms, and there was only a couple of commercial gyms around the place. So I thought the market is abroad in America and Canada. That's what I thought. But I always wanted to do something in my hometown. I always wanted to kind of give back in a way. So I sat down with my brother Dominic and I said to him, what do you think? Do you think it can work down there? A gym could work, a strength and conditioning facility and stuff. He said, look, what we'll do is we'll give it 1 year. 1 year. Do it. If it doesn't work, close it down and you can move. And 8 years later, from a 1,200 square foot unit in the industrial estate, now I'm in a 9,000 square foot unit, probably making it one of the biggest training facilities in Ireland. So if you were to ask me, like, years ago when I was suffering from depression and stuff, could I have seen this happen? Like, the answer would have been no. Like, I certainly didn't see kind of, or envision kind of where my life has got to now when I was struggling at the time. And sometimes it is, when you are struggling from depression or you've got panic attacks or anxiety and stuff, it is very hard to see past what you're suffering from at the moment. But eventually the confidence of turning up every day and putting things in place, like little small goals of continuous little small goals, have led into like bigger goals, which led into bigger goals again. And it's all about that progress from one thing leading into another thing. But my suggestion on my side or whatever like that is, action is the biggest key in anything, is taking action and actually moving and doing something or whatever, and building confidence through little small goals will eventually help you reach bigger goals. We only have one life. We're here for a certain amount of time. What really affects me or whatever like that, and what kind of triggers me at times and stuff like that, is people can go their whole lives without knowing what vulnerability feels like, without actually letting go and just seeing what it's like to talk to somebody, seeing what it's like to unpack the bag, seeing what it's like to kind of talk about the rocks in the rucksack or whatever like that, just seeing what it's like to walk around with a lighter rucksack. Is life better? Is it worse? Is it whatever? But at least give yourself a chance. Give yourself the chance. There's help out there. There's people who want to help you out there at the moment. Like, it's there. Just seek it. Look for it. Please. That's all I urge. That's what I've done, and it completely changed my life. It put me on a complete different path. And by me being vulnerable and by me putting myself out there and by me taking a chance, it completely changed my whole life. Be kind to yourself. In a world where, There's so much kind of attention going in different directions and all that kind of stuff. Be aware of who you are. Always be who you want to be. Act who you want to be. Try not to wear as many masks. Do some self-work. Accept yourself for who you are. Be kind to yourself so you can be kind to others. At the end of the day, guys, we're all struggling in this world. There's not one person. We got the most fame. If you think money and fame brings happiness and brings this, this blissful feeling and all that kind of stuff, why would we have so many famous people, so many rich people taking their own lives? Don't chase things for the sake of chasing things. Chase happiness. That's where it is. Chase self-acceptance and happiness in oneself. Be kind to yourself so you can be kind to others. You do not know what other people are suffering with. So always keep that in mind. So just be kind to yourself first. So then that becomes a habit and you'll be kind to others. At the end of the day, love yourself. You'll never be capable of loving anybody else. Showing love or accepting love until you can love yourself. And you are loved a lot more than you think. There's going to be stages throughout your life where you might feel alone. You might have a lot of people around you, but you still kind of feel lonely. And at them stages in your life, it's like walking down an empty road and to get to the other side, where the other side could be happiness, health, it could be, the end of depression, it could be getting rid of panic attacks or whatever it is. And sometimes you have to do this alone, and it is hard, it is difficult, but you just got to keep walking. You got to put one foot in front of the other, and you can't give up, you can't give in. And by the time you get to the end of the road, there's a new life, there's a new you. Like, there's the metaphor I use is like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Like there's happiness, there's health, there's whatever, but you can't give up.